these temporary bursts you can get from psychiatric medicine. A lot of times it's just like a concession or a band-aid. It's like, doctors saying, hey, I think in reality a lot of them might even be honest with themselves internally and go, these people are fucking idiots for coming down to me and asking for magic pills. I'm just gonna hand them whatever the hell they want to give me money for. You dumbass, you think you think I have a magic pill? You believe in wizards? Like, get the fuck out of here, give me your money.
Like kind of growing up when you grew up with like school life?
Oh man, my life's been so complex. No, I grew up in some pretty bad poverty. And, I mean, there's a million stories I could tell, but it's like, I don't know. I don't really. I mean, it's not that I don't really have much trauma attached to my childhood. Like I kind of worked through a lot of that in my 20s. But I went through a lot of rough times, and using psychedelics got me over pretty much all the trauma that I developed. It helped me to see into a lot of situations and realize where I was being influenced, by like abusive behavior that I'd received as a child. See, I grew up in a rough environment, very poor family, and a lot of drug addicts and crazy people that shouldn't be around children, and just all the insanity that poverty on an extreme level mixed with a lack of education and just all kinds of stuff, just bad economic opportunities in the area, it's all kind of stuff that came together, and just life was rough pretty much like from day one. So I was very aware that I was kind of like in a war zone from the time I was born. I think that drove a lot of my awareness, that created my desire to get ahead in life and learn things, at a faster rate than my peers and try to excel at things. I thought I wasn't gonna make it, from day one pretty much. And so like, I turned that awareness now into, I think, just kind of like an appreciation for life rather than like a fear mechanism. I can't turn it off. It's like I tried that. I tried not being like highly aware, but that is one thing, like the trauma or something will wire into you is your level of energy. It's like you're going to be on that level of impulse for the rest of your life probably, but to rewire those things and take trauma and maybe push it into art or like an interest in science or just whatever you can do with it, you got to redirect it, because it's gonna kill you otherwise. And so it's real essential, I think, for me to do a lot of things in life, because my childhood was it set a pace that I just never really got off of. And I've always kind of enjoyed the pace, I never was like, oh, life is too fast paced for me. I always kind of liked everything to be sped up, and I like a real intense version of things, like explosions and all the race cars and all kind of things that go fast. And so I think that was all bred by that pace that was set by my childhood. And then it was further, I was able to further investigate it through the use of psychedelics as an adult, and then pick apart what I didn't like about it. Like I said, I enjoy the mechanisms that it created that benefit me, but I don't enjoy the ones that were ruining my life early on, which, I went through a lot of just trauma-related stupidity, just like doing stupid shit because I'm a traumatized person, unwilling to admit it, and just like face all this shit and get over it, and then, now I feel like a more functional adult. But well, I think tribalism almost is a form of individualism. Individualism can be you reverting into your primal state. And I think what we most of the time as individuals need is to start from the beginning. So the primal state that we existed in, like when we evolved from monkeys or whatever, like the naked man running around the woods, beating the woman over the head with a club and shit, I think that's kind of where we came from, probably at some point in history. And so that primal person is still in your brainstem, your basal ganglia, and your right, all that stuff is right there with all that programming to be every one of your ancestors, basically, and yourself. And so if you want to dig back and figure out who you are, it's up to you to choose how far back you go. But Carl Jung had a lot of stuff about talking about the dark side of yourself. And if you don't go far enough back, I think a lot of times you don't find out if those parts are dark. You might go back to your primal self and find out that you're just like the loving archetype, you're just like, oh shit, I was just the fucking party animal as my primal self. That's what happened. You take like a bunch of acid. You take 10, 20 hits and primal self is out, and it's like you might have been just the fucking greatest guy in the village already, and that's fine. I think a lot of people find that, but then you might find that, oh shit, my primal archetype was a piece of shit, I was here to hurt, destroy, and kill people maybe in my former iterations. And so you as a person, you can choose to remold that. You can say, okay, well, I'm not going to be that in this version of me. And so to know that, though, you would need to break it down And I think what Carl Jung talked about, the dark side, is the ability to see, the ability to keep digging until you find all those potential dark sides. It's not about forcing yourself to look for a dark side, but it's like finding the potential ones that exist. It almost requires to like dig through yourself. And if there's a layer that exists down there, you know, which we all know there is, like you can bullshit yourself and say, oh, I'm noble and righteous or religious and pious, like whatever the fuck you could say you are. You like sex and drugs and explosions and rock and roll. I mean, all the visceral things that still punch you are coming into that you know, they're tapping into that area of who you are. So I sensed this from a very young age, that there's a lot of things and people and advertising, all this shit tapping into my primal self. And those things and those people, they seem to know my primal self better than I did. And as I aged as a man, that kind of bothered me. It's like, I don't want an advertiser to know me better than I know myself. That's crazy. That means I'm almost inherently going to be a victim. Like, it's just not possible to escape the victimhood. And so I had to know myself. Like, I had to. It was like, okay, if they're able to, because I don't want nobody to extract anything out of me or take advantage of me or get something that I wasn't aware of. You know, I don't mind giving everything I have away or donating or doing whatever with my time. But for somebody to be able to steal that from me is sort of like it's an offensive thing, you know. And so it's like, for me to keep you from stealing from me on that level, on that socioeconomic or moral level, I have to be able to figure out what I'm susceptible to. And I think my development as a person, I don't know if I've become massively useful to society in any way since this, but I've reduced the harm that I've created in society, you know, drastically by getting to know myself better. And so I don't think there's much wrong. I think we have a lot of skills and talent, a lot of love, a lot of creativity, a lot of beautiful people, like a lot of great shit we could do. I think really it's just the shit that holds us back is those things, that lack of personal development. People realizing like, oh, you might have everything around you that could produce actually all the euphoria you ever wanted. It's fucking euphoria you're chasing with this drug, hiding out in an alley because you think, oh man, I can only get this high if people aren't looking. Nobody else would want me to feel this way. It's like, well, maybe you could achieve that, you know, in a community sense. If everybody agreed together, let's all feel this way. We don't have to use the drug to do it. You know, we might have some real smart people in the group that help you and like, hey man, you're doing this a really dumb way. So many times in my life, I've exposed myself to the light, you know, in a sense, and people have come into my life and said, oh, hey, this is stupid. I want to help you have more pleasure. Like, you know, they've been like, hey, I want to help you feel better. You know, you're just doing stupid shit that hurts yourself while thinking it's the best way to do something. And so to have that pleasure-seeking, like, mentality together as a whole, I think it's what, I mean, it has a limitation. We don't all want to be just chasing that primal self all the time. But if you can build from that primal self and show yourself who you are and know that you don't have flaws, or if you do have flaws, know how to not to cater to them, you know, not to let your temptations be fueled, you know, like people, you know, problems don't need the fuel for those problems all the time. And so to know that, you need to know how susceptible you are to certain things. And so you got to test yourself in a lot of ways to figure this shit out. But, you know, I think a lot of people break themselves in the process of testing these ideas, but I'm very lucky to have kind of figured out a lot of my limits in that way. And
that's through a lot of like self-reflection.
A lot of psychedelics, man. It's the intention I have, so it's my intention that's creating it. But the empowerment to do it is like straight up beyond me. Like, I'm not gonna do that amount of internal work without a certain level of energy. And like, I don't have maybe I do believe in alternate routes for these things, but I think some of these alternate routes are a little bit deceptive. You know, if you want to get that high level of functioning, you need a crazy diet. I need to be eating like the king's diet. I've been at points in my life where I could eat 2 ribeyes a day and a pile of fruit and honey and herbs and spices and all these things, and I can get damn near to the same place as I would by taking psychedelics. And I can get enough energy to have like mental courage to go fight all these little battles and win all this stuff, you know. But I can't, in most of my life, I've experienced poverty and I struggle, and like, I can't afford that. You know, I've tried that, you know, at the expense of having to do criminal things. You know, it's a lot of why I did criminal things, because I realized, like, my God, the stage of empowerment you can get to if you use your money right. You know, eating proper and taking care of yourself, lifestyle adjustments, even things that I think are like steroids for the brain, you know, like using different nootropics in conjunction with psychedelics. And there's all kinds of crazy things you can do if you have money and resources. And so I've seen and tasted some of these things, sort of, and so I have a desire to push myself forward in ways. that are a bit artificial, I guess, you know. Like I know that there needs to be a boost from some area for me to be able to do that efficiently. And so, huh?
Any umbrellas?
Pardon?
Any umbrellas?
That one? Try it.
They're not gonna care, right?
I think that's what they're there.
I don't think anybody should be upset if you use their umbrella while they're not using it. They're not using it, so yeah.
Yeah, as long as I bring it back, right?
I believe you should use an intelligent cocktail of things and know what you're doing and know how it applies to your exact situation. And in order to do that, you would need such individualized care that you yourself almost need to become the chemist, the biologist, the nutritionist. That you need to be your own doctor to an extent that you can protect yourself from the the nefarious interests of pharmaceutical companies and food companies, and you got to be armed from every angle. And I think you're going down to a real strange gamble when you just ask a guy who you have no idea if he himself has his life in order. You're asking him to put yours in order and do it with some sort of magic pill. You know, it's like if the magic pill worked, then he would be probably not needing a job. The guy might just be on a mountaintop being happy somewhere, and it just doesn't work. There's no magic pill. There's no correcting a brain chemistry issue and then living euphoric forever. You know, there's temporary states of happiness that you could achieve, and it's usually at the expense of some other state. You know, you're going to put yourself in a down state a lot of times, and going too high means you're going to go too low. And so these temporary bursts you can get from psychiatric medicine, a lot of times it's just like a concession or a band-aid. It's like, you know, doctors saying, hey, I think in reality a lot of them might even be honest with themselves internally and go, these people are fucking idiots for coming down to me and asking for magic pills. I'm just gonna hand them whatever the hell they want to give me money for. You dumbass, you think that you think I have a magic pill? You believe in wizards? Like, get the fuck out of here, give me your money. Well, give me your money. No, go ahead and stay and just keep giving me your money. That's what a lot of psychiatrists are. Some of those bitter, evil fucking people when you try to talk to them. Try to talk about science, philosophy, like unbiased opinions, unbiased, anything that's not geared towards their vein of interest that pushes some industry where they've garnered their education, you know. And a lot of them, it's not even as intentional. It's just that they've literally been educated by advertising companies and pharmaceutical companies. They think that their curriculum was mildly corrupted by the pharmaceutical company, but they don't realize it was 100% crafted by the pharmaceutical company. It was created to begin with by the people that you think are the corrupt entities. A lot of times people can identify the corruption with you, but then not realize that their entire training came from the genesis of, you know, was of corruption, you know, the same corruption. So I've lost all respect for the man who can, you know, basically can't find sin within himself. You know, it's like the cast the first stone thing, you know. It's like, I'm just asking for myself to get stoned by the fucking community if I go down and tell someone else to create my happiness for me with a fucking pill or some device or whatever the hell it is. You know, it's like, okay, you've given yourself away. You know, like it's the same concept as like Cyrus in the Matrix. You know, he wants to go back in. He wants to just forget everything and pretend that know that it's all fake, but still pretend that he doesn't know and enjoy it all even more and almost engineer his own euphoria in a way that it's like you're chasing this fleeting thing, you know, this happiness, this liberation feeling. It's like an explosion. It can't just keep going. You know, it explodes and contracts, and that's your emotions, your consciousness. Like every part of your life is this. And so to think that somebody can medicate you into a state that's going to be even better than your cycle of insanity, you know. So what if you go up and down and lose all your shit all the time and go back into loving people sometimes? Like, so what? The state that you're going to get medicated into by the other individual is going to be behooving to their interests. They're going to be crafting you into a state that makes you most useful or tolerable for them and for society. And so if you want to be used, go down there and get used, you know. I don't. Like, I'd rather just die as a fucking crazy cyclical thing that goes up and down, explodes and contracts, and all this crazy shit, you know. Like, that's what I am. That's what I want to be. I might medicate myself in one direction. If I go too far one way, I might medicate myself back in the other direction occasionally. And playing with your neurochemistry is perfectly fine if you know what you're doing or you're willing to accept the risks. But if you don't have an education of pharmacology and chemistry and all these subjects and a objective grasp on yourself as an individual, you're not qualified to go toying with these mechanisms that built who you are and that influence your actions. And your system will go haywire, and you might end up in a much deeper state of hell than you ever wanted to be in. You might become much more, and you most likely will become much more mismatched for your environment if you trust other people to engineer your happiness.
Prison is more like what your perception of that was the justice system.
Oh man, prison was pretty unexpected, but like I was arrested for marijuana and mushrooms, and it was such a, to me still, it's like I don't give a shit about either one of those things. They're not crimes to me, and they weren't to anybody around me, even the system itself, even the guards, the police. It was like the police that arrested me, there was a few of them that were angry and pretended like they cared, and but that's just the act they put on because they're in some kind of agenda, and there's a whole story behind every arrest. But then once I was into the system, I was pretty much treated with a lot of grace, because they're like, oh yeah, you weed and mushrooms, like everybody's in there for violent stuff, and having nothing like that on my record, nothing else in attachment to that, it made me kind of just not really take it serious. It's like, okay, you can give me the class on drugs and all this behavior modification shit. I don't give a fuck. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Like, I did the thing I did in the wrong place, but it's like even agreed upon with laws now that I could do this same thing in certain places. So it's like, if we can all agree on that, then whatever this place I can do this in shouldn't be some magical place. It's a real place you can get on a plane and fly to, without a passport. And so, but it's, so yeah, it's, to me, it was a really interesting experience going in and just viewing everything very objectively. I try to put myself in an external state of mind to where I went through Marine Corps boot camp as well. I was a Marine for 4 years, and so during Marine Corps boot camp, I entered a state of external viewpoint as well, and that was a lot of how I got through it. And from that viewpoint, you can incorporate a lot of humor and sort of retrospective and prospective thinking. I guess in futuristic thinking, you can incorporate a larger perspective if you have a more external view of yourself. And so I've kind of always used a bit of intentional depersonalization to detach from any situation and watch myself almost as if I'm a video game character or something,
A lot of people have to do that.
A lot of people that intelligently adapt to it, you'll catch them, that's their adaptation, so they don't drag along a lot of the stuff that goes with work or trauma or they don't drag a lot of that into their normal interactions. And it's a defense mechanism, especially in prison too, because you can't really be depressed or upset. Everybody's there, everybody's in prison, and especially if you have a low sentence, almost everybody has a higher sentence, than somebody else, and there's always some guy that has a life sentence, or something. You never know who you're interacting with, and you always want to be very upbeat and jovial, because you're like, I don't want to, it's like when men complain, men don't usually show sympathy on men that complain if you can't fix the situation. Men like beat the shit out of other men when they complain if you can't fix the situation. So it's like, you might complain about your girlfriend and somebody just punch you in the face, and they're like, shut up. Like, my mom died yesterday and I have a life sentence. Shut up. If you're lucky, you might get punched. You might get stabbed for that, And so you learn this sort of like stoic attitude where you're like, okay, I have to do something here. Like, if you're going to be an alive and aware consciousness living inside of your brain, you have to do something to entertain yourself. And for me, it was like, I have to detach and be part of some wider perspective. I have to be looking at myself, the guards, the institution, the laws, everything that caused this on a big scale. Because somewhere within all of it, there's a lot of humor, and there's somewhere within it, there's purpose, and maybe the purpose wasn't even engineered by the people that put me there, but it might be something different that I can't see. And so I just really wanted that. I was like, I know I'm going to live through this. I'm not planning to die here. I'm not planning for this to end me. So it's like, I have to create a temporary adaptation, and if I can create one that helps me still develop as a person, during that period, of course it's going to stagnate your development drastically. But, to still be moving forward in some kind of way is, I think, essential for happiness and like everybody.
Where do you think fear comes from in people and in general in the United States?
People in the United States in general?
Yeah.
My fears are so complex and different than I think than a lot of people's. I have a different set of things to worry about, I think, most of the time. But in general, it's just economic fear. There's a state of on the verge, like consumerism and wartime mentality that just keeps getting capitalized upon more and more on the macro and microeconomic scale. And people are just encouraged to buy and do more, and there's just this benchmark being set, not even to be cool, but just to freaking exist, just to say that you're not a vagabond or a scumbag. You need a car and a house and X amount of things that do have a serious intrinsic value, but if you take them as just a mandatory item for you to be out here in this society, then they lose their value, they lose their purpose. It's just, these are the things that you're almost like state issued items, and so people view this as like, I have to have this, this thing in my life, I have to have a car, I have to have a house, I have to have all these things at all times, otherwise I'm not gonna make it. And in a competitive economic environment, especially if it's capitalistic, you probably wouldn't operate in different cycles than nature does. Nature doesn't operate, all the trees don't grow at the same rate. Like, you can look at it, like 10% of the trees grow faster than the other 90%. It's because once something exceeds and pokes through the canopy, it gets more access to light and it shields the things around it, even from keeps other things from growing as fast. So it's the same way in society. If you're out here trying to compete for whatever they want you to have, you're inevitably going to be trapped in this cycle of being able to earn slightly less than it requires to get what you want. And as long as they can keep confounding upon this, because like I said, it's a very wartime mentality. It's like, it's driven by like, here, let's hurry up and fucking party because the country might lose the war, or maybe we just won the war and let's party because the other country's going to rebuild their forces and come attack us again. It's this sort of like feast and famine cycle, and you have to control it. It's like, I love to have nice shit, I love to drive around the car, have a nice house, all this stuff, I don't have a lot of these things, but I've had them and I've enjoyed them, and I'll have them again. But to see people just think like, oh, you have to have all that, it ruins their happiness. Like, people give you all kind of bullshit that they're struggling with, and I think there's a lot of struggles between men and women. Relationships are a big deal, but when you really just boil it down, I think it's these economic boundaries that are set on people and all these limitations and all these requirements. It fucks up their social reasoning ability. They're not able to talk to you. Like, they're too wrapped up in their phone trying to figure out how to get laid, or what I gotta do for work, or I need to plan my life out X amount of time because I'm gonna meet these people in the future, and if I don't make the right impression, I can't. It's this over engineering, and it's like, most people were all just told that they're really smart or something, and it's like, most people aren't. Like, the way most people are going to get by is not using the same kind of strategies. Like, you build your strategy to the architecture you're given in life, your personality, your environment, all these different things. And so your strategy is yours, like the same way, it's your weapon. You got to have a weapon that's built for you to wield it best. You don't want to play on somebody else's playing field. You'll never win, like, it just doesn't work. Like, if I set the rules, like, you can be the best player in my game, but you can't win. And so it's this big trap where it's like, yeah, you have to engage in these games that you can't win in. You're infinitely fucking doomed if you want to impress the people that you think may make you happy. I'd say with most men, it's driven towards a relationship. It's something like, they think they're going to get a lot of money and nice car, nice house, all this shit, and the girl that they want is going to not necessarily even be impressed with that. I think a lot of people aren't as materialistic as people think they are, especially in America. It's not that they're going to go flaunt their house and car to the woman and say, look what I have, But what they're going to do is they're going to stop themselves from being judged at a certain scale by that woman. And that's what they're worried about. They're worried, if I don't have this, what if I don't have that? It's not what I have. It's like, what does she have, and what does the men around her have, and what can I, like, what do I need to have? And so a lot of guys will drive themselves into this ability by just beating the shit out of themselves, pushing themselves way past their talent level, their skill level, everything in life, their education, way out of their league. They're in a field somebody else created. They're going to get fucked up. They're a fucking middle schooler trying to play in the NFL, It's like, it's just not going to work. You're going to get the shit beat out of you. I'm 5'9", I weigh 135 pounds. Like, I don't go trying to fight UFC fighters and guys that weigh 250, Like, I learned my lesson. Like, it's just not going to work. So you got to fight your battles properly, and sometimes the battle you're able to fight might not get you all the fancy shit that gets the girl that you see that you like, And
I think people are told that in the US, that they can do anything, and they can make millions, and, they can be top of they can live the kind of American dream, but there's actually not enough money for everyone to have that necessarily.
Yeah, I think there's a natural distribution of abilities and desirability. You know, it's the same distribution you see in the woods with the trees. It's the same with people. There's 10-20% of people that are beautiful and doing way more than the people around them. You know, it's not really an even distribution. So I think that uneven distribution amongst us is what pushes us forward as a group. You know, those people are kind of the tendrils, the things that reach out and grab a hold of new and exciting things in the world and bring them back for the group to share. And so I think that's a natural function, that you're going to have that small group. And I think traditionally, a lot of times, royalty and different things would shield those groups of people very heavily from the public. It's like you might see the princess once a week, you know, from a counter, you know, from the balcony at the castle, you know, or whatever. But now you get to see the princess every fucking day right in front of you. You get to turn on your Instagram and all the princesses are right there looking at you, square in the fucking eyes, and all the best drugs, all the best. It's just the best of everything, you know. We live in a fucking paradise where it's like you just got all the fucking options, everything's on the menu, and there's damn near nobody trying to stop you from any of it. There's very few things that are off limits in society. As far as like things that give you pleasure, it's like we're all pretty much on the same page. Like, yeah, let's leave all that stuff in place. Like, you might like regulate it or make things illegal just so certain groups can enjoy stuff more, but it's like nobody's like, yeah, so you just gotta go join that group and then you can use that stuff. So it's like,
what do you think about shame, pride and shame, and how people they feel that burden of like shame in society?
I think most of that shame is some sort of either a projected failure that like they're just not even able to compete at something that they wanted to compete at, or an actual failure, because most people are genuinely mismatched for the game. That's why capitalism works, is because 80% of the people are willing to overwork themselves so the other 20% can be, unencumbered and have more freedom. And I think almost as a whole, you know, as a capitalistic society, you agree on that. You know that statistic. You know that's how it works. But inherently, everyone thinks they're part of that 10 or 20%. Like, you know, I'm the one that needs to work less, and I can be unencumbered by the ignorance of others, and I have the better solution. You know, it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect. Everybody thinks they're smarter than they actually are. You know. Well, they're told that they're not by their failures. They're told when they don't get the girl, when they don't get the, you know, and it's a harsh reality. It's like if you were really planning on going to the store and being able to afford something, then your bank account's empty, you know. It's like, it's the same feeling. It's like you worked your ass off. You know, I remember being a kid and working my ass off and all kinds of shit, seeing the most beautiful girl in class and thinking, oh, I'm gonna go get her once I get this skill in place or get this attribute. And I would still be just pitiful in comparison to the men that had competed for this woman, you know. It's like, you got the princess, all the men in town are competing, you know. And so it's like, if you find out you're at the bottom of that heap, like at the last moment, you know, by getting rejected, that's kind of what happens. People find out where they're at once they go and seek out that really high level job, or that really beautiful girl, that really amazing house, that group of people that you always dreamed of being part of, like all that shit, you know. You seek that out, and if you get it, yeah, glorious, whatever, ride around in your fucking Ferrari with your fucking six-pack and, you know, like whatever, but it's just the average person's not gonna get it. That's just how shit works. Like, it just, like, so you gotta accept the odds. It's gamble. It's, you know, and it's not, I don't know.
That's a really good way of putting it. So, yeah.